Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Hello, everybody. Maybe. I don't know if you can hear me or if you're even there. Is it really Wednesday? I think so. So just stay here. we need new songs. Throw a song out there that we have to do a parody to of trying to figure out if people are around. If anyone's out there. I don't even, maybe people are not out there. So maybe the song is completely accurate right now. Of I don't know if you can hear me. There we go. Hello. I sing the same song every single time. Hello. We always start with that I don't know if anyone's been around long enough. Alex has been around long enough to remember way back in the day when we first started. Every single week, I would actually have a different song that would start us off for the show. I would do a parody song, literally every single Wednesday. I would have a different parody of a Disney song to the tune of whatever. Talking about what we're going to be talking about. So, yeah. Hopefully people come on because today is an audience participation episode. So if people aren't on, it's going to kind of ruin the whole thing. Bonjour, 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 bonjour. Here comes the Wednesday show just like always. We are here to talk about the Disney. Ba-da-da-bum-ba. Yeah, it's bonsoir right now. Bonsoir, mon ami. I have people who I work with who speak Creole, which is a lot of French. And when I first started getting to know them and joking around with them, I found out that the word for lazy is paresser. So I always greet them with bonsoir, paresser. And then they call me a paresser as well. So it goes both ways. But how's everyone doing? You guys doing good? Hopefully everyone's doing good. Let's get this party started. We are going to start the 660th episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 660th episode of the Wednesday show. Today is April 13th, 2022. I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be doing one of my favorite games of all, a game of Connect the Dots. I don't know what the sound effects are, but I like it, so we're just keeping it. If you guys have never played, we're going to talk about the rules in just a second. But of course, before we get to that, let's talk about our news for the week. As always, thank you everyone who's been joining us for our Saturday in the Park. If you don't already know, every single Saturday right here on the From Screen to Team Facebook page, if that's where you're watching from. We do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. You never know where we're going to be, but I always guarantee we're going to have a lot of fun. So make sure you join us every single Saturday right here at 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Also, I don't know if you knew this, but every single day we are also posting a brand new video from the Walt Disney World Resort over on my YouTube channel, which some of you guys are watching from. So make sure you join us every single day on YouTube. And also, while you're over there, make sure that you are liking and subscribing because every like and every subscribe truly helps me out in the long run. So keep up the watching. I appreciate every single person who's been checking out our daily videos. And of course, as always, today's show is sponsored by It's All About the Mouse Travel. Make sure you stop by it'sallaboutthemousetravel.com for all of your Disney travel needs. All of their services are absolutely, positively, 100%ly free. So make sure you book with them for your next Disney vacation. Oi! I hope we get more people in because otherwise this is going to be a terrible game of Connect the Dots. So if you guys have never played a game of Connect the Dots before with us, Connect the Dots is essentially you guys are throwing different Disney items into the comments below. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the comments that you guys throw at, and we have to connect them from one to the other. So, for instance, let's look at the names that are on here right now. If Christine goes on and she says Splash Mountain, and then the next person is Candace, and she says Peter Pan, we have to figure out a way how to connect the two of them together in as little as possible, but sometimes it takes a while, and we sit here connecting all the dots. While we go through this and talk about all the different things, just keep on throwing more and more ideas out there. The only rule that we always have is we're not going to connect the same person's two dots back to back. So it's got to be someone else's connect the dots in between the other dots. It's essentially the Kevin Bacon game, but we're doing it Disney style. It's one of my favorite games to play. So let's start getting this. Do it. blah, 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 blah. Before we get started, as always, if we get more subscribers on YouTube as this video goes on, we will continue our game for longer than what we usually go for. So we're usually going to go until 10:30 Eastern time, but we might go longer. So our starting number is 1,475 subscribers. We are 25 away. Oh, 25 away is pretty cool. 1,500 is a goal that I've had for a while now. So let's try to get to 1,500 by the end of the episode today. Every single time we get a new subscriber, we will add a few more minutes to our game for the night. And if you know anyone who wants to join us, just do an at them in the comments. Invite them to come over and join us as well. We're going to have fun. I promise you we're going to have fun. Okay, everyone understands the rules. We already have a few people who've been putting the things in here. We're going to have to just wait for a little bit more just so we get a head start, because otherwise I might be getting these off right away. Our first one's going to be coming from YouTube. So we're starting off with Bob Gur, the Imagineer, and connecting Bob Gur to Baloo the Bear from the Jungle Book. All right. Keep on throwing your things into the comments below. And let's get started. Invite your friends. I don't know why we usually have a lot more people who are watching at this point. So hopefully we have more people who are joining as the night goes on here. All right, so Bob Gur. If you guys don't already know the story of Bob Gur, let's talk about Bob Gur. Actually, Bob Gur was once on this show itself. We sat right here in this room interviewing him. Just saw this is going to be a tough one to get to, but we'll get there. We'll get there somehow. Okay, so we interviewed Bob Gur right here on this show at one point. One of my favorite guests that we've ever had. He kept on yelling at me to buy his book. And Bob Gur is the man who created pretty much anything that moves at Disneyland. He also had some stuff over at Walt Disney World as well, but his main contributions were over at Disneyland, specifically things like the monorail, the speedway, the Main Street vehicles. Pretty much anything and everything that he did, is something that people would recognize at the parks today. So while you are going through Disneyland and you see several different items like the Matterhorn bobsleds, you can know very well that Bob Gur probably had a massive role in playing with those bobsleds and making sure that they actually would go the way they were supposed to go. So Bob Gur, an Imagineer. Now let's talk a little bit about a story that Bob Gur actually talked about right here on this show when we interviewed him about 6 or 7 years ago. During the thing, he talked about how the first time he ever interacted with Walt Disney was while he was looking at one of the Autopia cars. He was creating the Autopia cars. He was sitting there outside of a garage, and they were creating it on the studio lot. Walt Disney came up to him. He talked to him for a little bit, started walking away, and he said, "Who is that?" And the guy said that was Walt Disney. Now Walt Disney kind of just told him, "Keep it up. You're doing," he never said good job or good work or anything like that. It was keep it up, keep it up. That was kind of your sign that Walt Disney thought that you would have a good thing. Now, when Walt Disney would say good job, it was only one time ever really that was documented that someone came up to him and said, good job. Now, this was actually to Mark Davis. Mark Davis was another Imagineer. He was also an animator who brought us amazing characters like Cruella de Vil, Tinkerbell, and so many other classic characters. And then, of course, things, every time we get on the subject of Mark Davis, I'm always like, yes, he did all these things. But Mark Davis was working on the Country Bear Jamboree, and Country Bear Jamboree became known as Walt's Last Laugh, mainly due to the fact that Walt Disney walked up to him and he said, "Oh, I want to see some of those sketches for that bear show that we're working on." And he showed him those things. He laughed. He said, "Good job, Mark," and he walked away. That was the last time that Walt Disney saw Mark Davis, and it was also the only time that he ever heard him say good job. He knew at that point that Walt Disney would be passing away. Now, Walt Disney was working in a few different projects at that time when he would be passing away. One of them would be things like the Country Bear Jamboree / all of Walt Disney World, or the Florida Project as it was known at that time. And then for like live action films, he had things like The Happiest Millionaire, which I always found really ironic. The last live action film that Walt Disney ever worked on was a thing called The Happiest Millionaire, because to me, he's probably the happiest millionaire. Also, in addition to that, he was also working on his final animated film, which was The Jungle Book. And of course, The Jungle Book starred Baloo the Bear. Now, Baloo the Bear, originally debuted there. He was actually filmed by Phil Harris. Phil Harris had done the voices of pretty much any bear that you would know back in the 1960s/1970s. He would also be the voice of Little John in Robin Hood. He would also be found in Bedknobs and Broomsticks and several other things throughout the years. Now, not only was Baloo the Bear famous for that, but eventually back in the 1980s/1990s, they would start to come up with ideas for brand new shows starring one or lovable characters that everyone already knew. And we had things like Ducktales, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. We had new things like The Adventures of Gummy Bears, Bonkers, Darkwing Duck. When there's trouble, you call DW. Darkwing Duck. Let's get dangerous. And of course, one of my favorites was Tailspin. Now, Tailspin would also star Baloo the Bear along with his brand new sidekick, Kid Cloudkicker. Now, Tailspin was one of the 4 original shows that was found on the Disney Afternoon. In addition to that, we also had characters like, shows like, I was going to say Bonkers, but it wasn't Bonkers, Gummy Bears, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, and of course, my personal favorite, DuckTales. Now, DuckTales starred Huey, Dewey, Louie, Webbygale, and several other characters, but mainly Scrooge McDuck. Now, Scrooge McDuck would be a tight. Oh my gosh, how are we going to get this to Lime Garage? We're going to get there. Connecting the dots in my head right now. Okay, so Scrooge McDuck originally started off in the 1940s in a comic book where Donald Duck, along with Huey, Dewey, and Louie, would have to go and visit their miserable old uncle in a comic book called Christmas on Bear Mountain. Now, Christmas on Bear Mountain was supposed to be just a short little thing starring Uncle Scrooge, and then he would kind of go along his way. Now, Carl Barks was the animator/artist who actually created Scrooge McDuck, and he also created several other characters throughout the years. Now, eventually, Carl Barks would have it so his influence would cause influence among all of these different animators throughout the years, not just originally, but as time would go on. Now, you would have characters like the Reluctant Dragon was also kind of inspired by the artwork of what he was doing back in the 1940s because he knew the animators who were working on the film, The Reluctant Dragon. Now, if you've never seen The Reluctant Dragon was a film that came out back in the 1940s. It was essentially a film where Walt Disney had so many people requesting to take tours of the studios, and he didn't want to have it, so he took all these people through the studios. So he wanted to make his own film where it was kind of doing a showcase of walking around the studio. So they would have it so these different people would be going through the studios and creating a brand new film called The Reluctant Dragon. Now, The Reluctant Dragon is probably one of the most often forgotten about Disney films of all time. However, he has made a few appearances throughout the years. I know what a lot of you guys are thinking. Oh, Gertie the Dinosaur. No, not Gertie the Dinosaur. Gertie the Dinosaur is completely different. We're talking about The Reluctant Dragon here. The Reluctant Dragon, probably the last time that we actually saw him on film was in the 1980s film, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out in the 1980s, and it was a blend of so many different animated classic characters from not just Disney, but from Warner Brothers as well. And we saw characters like Mickey Mouse along with Bugs Bunny, Donald Duck along with Daffy Duck, and several other characters, while also being introduced to characters like Roger Rabbit and Jessica Rabbit. Speaking of Jessica Rabbit actually once became so popular that she had a massive sign of her placed on top of an area found in downtown Disney, the area known as Pleasure Island. Now, Pleasure Island would eventually dissolve back in the early 2010s, to like 10 years ago. I was going to say earlier this decade, but oh my gosh, we're getting old. What happened? It would dissolve about 10 years ago, and all of Pleasure Island became pretty much non-extinct. Now, as this time was going on and creating this non-extinction, they decided to expand the entire area of downtown Disney and create a brand new area called Disney Springs. Now, when they were creating Disney Springs, they also decided for the first time ever on Walt Disney World property to build not one, not two, but 3 parking garages. You have the grapefruit garage, the orange garage, and of course, the lime parking garage at Disney Springs. Now, the lime parking garage at Disney Springs does have a small little storyline going on behind it, where when you're looking at it, there's different line things on there about packaging for the different items that are going to be shipped away. Now, this is actually kind of going back with the storyline that they used to have at Pleasure Island that also tied into Typhoon Lagoon. Now, if you ever go to Typhoon Lagoon and you're walking around, there are several different packages for different items found for like bananas, coconuts, pineapples, etc., etc., etc. Especially over at Crush and Gusher. No, Humunga Cowabunga. No, Crush and Gusher. Crush and Gusher. Crush and Gusher? Yeah. Which is the first water coaster that was here at Walt Disney World. In addition to that, there was also a water coaster that would eventually make its way over to the Disney Cruise Line ships, starting first on the Disney Dream and then, of course, the Disney Fantasy as well. Now, while you're on the Disney Fantasy, you can go to the Animator's Palette, and while you're at the Animator's Palette, you can find several different things scattered around the room. There's different memorabilia from different Disney animated films. There's different references to Pixar films. And of course, there's a show that goes on while you're eating dinner. Now, this show that goes on while you're eating dinner takes you through so many different classic cartoons and classic animated films that it's tough to just kind of not get sucked into the entire thing. It's amazing. I just spent like the last week watching the video because future book. But anyways, that's besides the point. Now, the main star of this is none other than Sorcerer Mickey. Sorcerer Mickey has made several different appearances throughout the years in the Disney parks. Actually, when he was at the Animator's Palette over on the Disney Magic, you actually have Mickey come out and he's part of the show where he kind of goes around and waves at you after you finish dinner. Now, this isn't the first time that you would ever see Mickey wave around like this. The first time would actually be over in Fantasmic. Now, Fantasmic debuted over in Disneyland and then made its way over to the Walt Disney World as well. Now, when you would go through and watch Fantasmic, there were several different characters found throughout both the Disneyland and the Walt Disney World version, but there was a lot of differences as well. Now, for instance, over at Disneyland, they have an entire Peter Pan segment, and in Walt Disney World, instead, they have a Pocahontas segment instead, where they go through and you show all about the colors of the wind. Have you ever heard the wolf cry to the blue gone moon? Anyways, that's completely besides the point. I'm just getting distracted right now. Now, but you know what? We're on the topic of Pocahontas, so we might as well talk about Pocahontas a little bit more. Pocahontas is one of the few characters that originally was making character appearances back at Disney's Animal Kingdom back in the the late 1990s, early 2000s, mainly due to the fact that she had her own show there, Pocahontas and Her Forest Friends. Who remembers Pocahontas and Her Forest Friends and Sprig? Sprig was the greatest character that's ever created for the Disney parks. Sorry, Figment, but it's true. Hey, everybody, I'm a twig. Sprig the Twig, hands down one of the funniest characters of all time. But Pocahontas was over there, and eventually that area would go away to make way for Avatar. Now, when Pocahontas and Forest Friends were originally there, that was part of Camp Mini Mickey, which was part of one of the opening day lands of Disney's Animal Kingdom. The other ones being the Oasis, which is the area that you enter into, Discovery Island, Dinoland USA, and not Asia, but Africa instead. Africa actually has the signature attraction of the entire park, Kilimanjaro Safaris. And if you've ever gone on Kilimanjaro Safaris, you may have seen different things like the people walking above you. That's actually part of one of the tours. Now, these tours were not actually part of Disney's Animal Kingdom on opening day. They actually started coming in it was 2010, maybe 2011. 2011. I want to say it was 2011. And the tour was so successful that it eventually led to other tours as well. Now, one of the tours is the Caring for Giants tour. What? How did we get there? I have no idea, but we got there. Caring for Giants is a tour that lets you get up close and personal with the different elephants. Now, speaking of elephants, one of the most famous elephants of all time is not the elephants on the safari, but of course, Dumbo the Flying Elephant. Now, Dumbo the Flying Elephant first debuted back in the 1940s. Eventually, he would have his own theme park attraction known as Dumbo the Flying Elephant. Dumbo is actually the name of the film, but I like calling him Dumbo the Flying Elephant. It just makes it a little bit nicer ring to it. Anyways, so Dumbo would have his own attraction. Originally, when the park opened up, the location where Disneyland's Dumbo the Flying Elephant sits today was actually home to where the Mad Tea Party sits today. Eventually, the two attractions would kind of swap things up, and Dumbo would get his brand new home where it currently sits still to this day. Now, that's not the only time that an attraction has ever switched, being Dumbo. Here at Walt Disney World, Dumbo actually started behind the carousel, and then in the 2010s, it would swap up and make its way over to Storybook Circus, where there are now two Dumbo the Flying Elephants. While you were actually in the queue for Dumbo the Flying Elephant, you're walking around, and there's actually some there's like a playground area, and if you look on the back wall of some of the playground areas, you can find different clowns. There's 7 of them, as a nod to the Firehouse 5 plus 2. Now, the Firehouse 5 plus 2 was actually a band that was created of different animators from the Disney studios that would actually perform over at Disneyland. Now, these performances would be so popular that they actually would be working both jobs as animators and as musicians at the parks, and they have a few different references to them still around the parks today. Not only are they there, but you can also find a reference to them over at the Storybook Circus gift shop. You can also find a reference to Firehouse 5 plus 2 over at Toy Story Mania as well. Speaking of Toy Story Mania is in Toy Story Mania is an attraction that has a little viewfinder thing that you can find while you're going through the line. They actually have 2 different little holders or different cards that you can actually find while you're inside the queue. One of them is for Peter Pan. The other one is for Disneyland. Now, if you look at the one for Disneyland, you can find several different attractions at Disneyland, including the original People Mover attraction that was found over at Disneyland's Tomorrowland. Whew. I need a drink because I've already said a lot. Okay. And man, hopefully me rambling about Disney is going to help you have a better night. Right, so People Mover, we're going to the next one. So People Mover made its debut over at Walt Disney World in 1975, and it became one of the few attractions around the park that only would look into other attractions. You could go over and you could see inside of the Speedway, which is an open attraction, but still you can see the Speedway. You could also see inside of Space Mountain. You could also see in Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin. Now, Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin was, of course, inspired by the 1995 film Toy Story. Now, Toy Story became so popular that in 1999, they would also create a sequel, Toy Story 2, in that was 1999. 2010, they would create Toy Story 3, and then just a few years ago, we had Toy Story 4. But that's besides the point. Let's talk a little bit about Toy Story 2. Now, Toy Story 2 was the 3rd Pixar film that came out. It was so insanely popular, even though at that point, Disney was actually purchasing... let me go back. We're still talking about Toy Story 2. I messed up my words. I can't believe that I've talked about like 1,500 things already, and it's only been 23 minutes of this episode. So Toy Story 2, the deal originally with Pixar and Disney before Disney would actually purchase Pixar was if Pixar came out with a film, Disney had the rights to all of the animated classics, or I'm sorry, all the sequels to that film that would be direct-to-video. So originally, Toy Story 2 was going to be a direct-to-video film put out by Disney and not having anything with the Pixar label. Pixar said, no. We want to have it so we create this film on our own, with your aid, of course, but we want to have it so we create this film on our own and have it so we create the form of Toy Story 2. So the entire idea of the sequel is pitched, thrown out the window, and then the animators who were originally working on it were thrown to different projects. Now, a few of the different projects that were being worked on, they wanted to have it so it still had a similar level of zaniness that they would be working on when they came to Toy Story 2. And one of the ideas that they had was the idea of the Emperor's New Groove. So Emperor's New Groove would debut back in 2001 as one of the greatest, if not the most hilarious, Disney animated films of all time. I mean, Cusco. No touchy. So the characters of Cusco, Pacha, Yzma, and of course Kronk would be loved by all. Now, speaking of loved by all, Kronk. Let's talk about Kronk because Kronk is just one of the greatest characters of all time. He was actually voiced by Patrick Warburton, who was also the voice or the host of Patrick, the person who introduces you to Soren or Soren Over the World, depending on which version you are talking about. But he is the chief flight attendant that would actually introduce you to the attraction. Now, the idea of Soren came out with the idea of an erector set. One of the guys was trying to figure out exactly how to have it so they would have 3 different people on the level. And this guy came up with the idea of using an erector set that he had back in his childhood days. And he built the idea during Thanksgiving. I know, what are you thinking? Thanksgiving, it's an amazing time. I love Thanksgiving. You know, the best meal in Magic Kingdom, in my personal opinion, is over at Liberty Tree Tavern because they give you like a Thanksgiving Day feast. It's amazing. It's got so many great things. And there's so many different cool, fun finds inside of Liberty Tree Tavern that most people just walk right on by. In fact, there are several different rooms in there that are all themed around specific people. There's rooms like the George Washington / Martha Washington room. And when you're actually inside those rooms, you can actually find different items that were actually owned by those people. They don't tell you this, but it's true. So when you're in each one of those rooms, you can find actual items that were created and specifically made for those rooms, or not for those rooms, by those people, and they were taken from those people and put in those rooms. So when you're actually in there, you can find different artifacts. It's just one of the amazing things about Liberty Square, of having that authenticity. Now, while you're walking around Liberty Square, there are so many different fun finds that you can see. Things like the ground being a different color because it's supposed to represent the sewage. And when you're inside the Haunted Mansion area, you can find a ring that's embedded on the ground. Now, the ring that was embedded on the ground is actually based off of something that people thought for years and years and years was a different ring on the ground. Now, if you used to go to the exit of the Haunted Mansion, on the ground, someone actually had to put a pole in there. Well, there was a pole in there, not just like a random guest was like, hey, here's a pole. I marked this as Brentland. No, it was a completely different pole. That was part of the thing. It broke off because an ECV hit it, and it left a small circle on the ground, and most people thought, hey, it's a wedding ring. The bride would throw it out the window, and it was embedded into the ground. The Imagineers actually liked this idea so much that they put their own wedding ring at the entrance of the attraction when it opened up on March 24th, 2011. That's right, my birthday. It was the greatest birthday ever. Seeing that, I was like, oh my gosh, it opened just for me. Anyways, so that idea of having a wedding ring there was something pretty special. Now, the idea of these wedding rings found throughout Walt Disney World, this is not the only time you can find a symbol of love and marriage found in Walt Disney World. In fact, if you go over to Cinderella's royal table, while you're there, you can actually propose with a ring and a glass slipper that will actually say, will you marry me? Now, this is the only glass slipper that you can find. Also, if you go to Storybook Circus, in the queue line, you can actually find the actual glass slipper that belonged to Cinderella. Wait, I'm trying to find my next thing. Keep throwing the things. Keep on throwing the things on the chat room here. Okay, so there's Mary. Your next one was Cinderella Castle, but the rule is we can't do duplicates from the same person. So you can do another one now that there's just no one who put an idea in between you. Plus, it would be really easy to say Glass Slipper, Cinderella's Castle. They're right there. So we're going to continue on to our next one, which is the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie play area at Disney's Hollywood Studios. So, this is such an easy one. So the Glass Slipper is not the only thing that was actually represented for the movie Cinderella. Now, back in the early 2010s, there was actually a live action film called Cinderella. Hands down, probably my favorite of the live action adaptations of any Disney animated film that I've ever seen, but that's just my personal opinion. Maybe you guys have different ideas. I would say throw your ideas in the chat room, but otherwise we're going to be having lots more topics I may have to go through later on. I'm going to be like, oh, this is a live action movie, live action movie, live action movie, live action. We're not doing that. But when Cinderella came out, I think it was 2015. I could be wrong, but I think it was 2015. They wanted to promote the film in some way, shape, or form over at Disney's Hollywood Studios. So they decided to bring the actual pumpkin coach, like the actual one from the film, and place it inside of Disney's Hollywood Studios so people could get their pictures taken in front of it. I got my picture taken in front of there like 5 times, mainly due to the fact that I went there one time and then I had like 4 different groups of friends who I went to the park with, and each time they're like, oh, we should get a picture. And I was like, okay, I've seen this several times already. Anyways, The location of that was right in front of the area that would actually be known as the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set playground at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set playground at Disney's Hollywood Studios, one of my favorite things that you would ever see. Like, hands down, one of my favorite things that I've ever seen anywhere around the Walt Disney World property. Now, inside of this area, they had a giant super soaker gun that would spray guests while they were going through. They had a giant nose of Cork the dog that would sniff you when you went by. And then one of my favorite things of all was they had a slide that was actually made out of camera reels. Like, it was like a canister of film that you actually slide down. It was so cool. It kind of reminded me of when you would used to go to the camera shop on Main Street, USA. Now, inside the Main Street, USA camera shop, there was all this different old film reel stuff. They actually still have a lot of it over there, but not all of it that they used to have. But they used to have its own little area in the back. Now, if you went to the back of the Town Square Theater, there was actually a theater back there at one point. Eventually, Mickey Mouse and Tinkerbell would take its place. But we're going to talk a little bit about the theater. Now, the theater had it so there were several different poster cutout areas that you could put yourself into. I vividly remember going over there with my little brother, and we put ourselves inside of a scene from 101 Dalmatians. They also had Toy Story and several other things. On the back wall, they had this massive mural. It was the coolest mural in the world. It started with Steamboat Willie, and it made its way all the way to 2000 to the film Dinosaur. Now, when you were looking through all these different films, they had so many different things, including things like I almost jumped to it right away. They almost had things like Sleeping Beauty, or they had things like Aladdin, or they even had like Pixar films. Now, at that point, there was only 3 Pixar films out. We already had Toy Story, Toy Story 2, but the second Pixar film was A Bug's Life. A Bug's Life was on there as well. No, A Bug's Life was not the most popular of the Pixar films. However, it did inspire its own land. Now, the land that inspired was the land known as a Bug's Land over at Disney's California Adventure. Now, Bug's Land, hands down, one of my favorite areas of any Disney park. I was so mad when they got rid of it. But A Bug's Land had so many different things, like Heimlich's Choo Choo Train, and Heimlich's Choo Choo Train, and Heimlich's Choo Choo Train, and what was the other one? Oh, Heimlich's Choo Choo Train. Greatest ride ever. Candy corn. I love candy corn. Heimlich's Choo Choo Train, hands down, one of the funniest attractions I've ever been on in my life. Eventually, these attractions would disappear because shortly before it would close down, the Tower of Terror would become home to Guardians of the Galaxy. And when that happened, they decided to create their own area called Avengers Campus. Now, one of the cool things about Avengers Campus, I've not gone there yet, but one of the cool things about Avengers Campus is when you're there, you can see several different Marvel characters that are debuting around the fact that they just had a movie come out. That includes right now with Moon Knight. Now, Moon Knight is actually walking around the area, and of course Moon Knight is probably better known to some people in human form as Mark Spector. Now, Mark Spector was the character for Moon Knight, or he is the character of Moon Knight, who actually has 3 different personalities. But how am I going to connect these two? But when you go to Avengers Campus, you can see him walking around. Of course, they have other areas that he's like, kind of hovering around, like the Spider-Man attraction, and then Doctor Strange's area, and then of course the ambient, the boss area. Oh, Eric, this is a tough one to connect to. Now the other area, the Ant-Man and the Wasp cafeteria, has larger than life food that guests can go back and they can enjoy. I love good food. I love a good massive idea of pretzels. Oh my gosh, I'm just killing time right now trying to figure out how I'm going to connect these two. But yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really liked Ant-Man and the Wasp. I don't know about you guys, but I always thought it was a great film. I like Ant-Man. I think Ant-Man is hilarious with Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd's just such a great character. Now, if you've never seen Ant-Man, it's about a guy who's just an average Joe, and he breaks into houses and stuff. And when he breaks into these different houses, he goes through and he's a common crook. At one point, he works at Baskin Robbins, probably one of the funniest scenes in any Marvel film. But overall, his main job is being a thief. Now, eventually, Hank Pym's house has to be broken into, and he's got the job of breaking into the house. And if you watch when he breaks into the house, It's kind of one of those things where it's not a great thing to do. Like, you really shouldn't break into people's houses. However, there have been several different Disney characters throughout the years who've broken into people's houses. Because it's just a good plotline advice. Like, why wouldn't you have a character break into a house? This includes characters like my two favorite characters, Bernard and Bianca. I love Bernard and Bianca from the Rescuers, but essentially they broke into the house that belongs to Penny, or the orphanage that she was staying at. And while they're there, they meet Rufus, and Rufus sends them on their way to eventually find Madame Medusa. And when they're there, they meet several different characters. And one of my favorite characters is Evinrude, the Firefly. I don't know. That was a stretch, but I'm sticking with it. It was a good one. Now, Evinrude would make his debut back in 1977. At this point, 1977 wasn't the greatest year for Disney animated films. The animated films were kind of on its way out. However, we also had The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh that came out that year. And we also had a few other live action Disney films that came out as well, right at that time as well. Actually, the first sequel to Herbie came out that year, Herbie Rides Again. A few years later, we'd have Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, and then Herbie Goes Bananas. But overall, lots of films, and they all star Herbie. Now, Herbie eventually, he originally made his debut back in 1969 in the film The Love Bug. And if you've ever gone over to All-Star Movies at Disney's or at Walt Disney World, at All-Star Movies, there's actually an entire section that is based around Herbie the Love Bug. On the area, you have these giant clapboards, and on the clapboards, you have things like The Love Bug, Herbie Rides Again, Herbie Goes Bananas, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, and it's all these different references to Herbie. Now, in addition to that area, we also have Fantasia with Fantasia and Fantasia 2000, 101 Dalmatians, and the Mighty Ducks, and of course, Toy Story. We've talked a lot about Toy Story tonight, but this was the first time that people were actually shrunken down to the size of a toy at a Disney park. It was specifically made for this specific area of this park. Now, when guests eventually would have Disneyland Paris's sister park, Walt Disney Studios, inside of that park, they had the first Toy Story Land, and then eventually we'd actually get a Toy Story Land here at Disney's Hollywood Studios as well. Now, Disney's Hollywood Studios didn't really have an entire land themed around a movie at that point. However, there were different sections of different areas that were kind of themed around it. For instance, you had things like the Indiana Jones Epic Stunt Spectacular. It was part of Echo Lake, even though there was parts of it that kind of spilled out into the Echo Lake area that it paid tribute to that area. Same thing with Star Tours. Even though Star Tours itself was not part of a different area or had its own land, it was actually part of Echo Lake. The final one that was actually found over there at Disney's Hollywood Studios would be the Streets of America. Part of the Streets of America was technically the area where Muppet Vision 3D happened. Now, when you would go to Muppet Vision 3D, originally there was a giant hot air balloon up on the top, and on that hot air balloon was none other than Kermit the Frog. Is this Grandmother Willow? Grandmother Willow is what we're going for next. You're going way back. I forgot that I've been talking forever, and you guys are probably really far behind me, or you're probably really far ahead of me. Holy cow, you guys are really far ahead of me. Holy cow. I've not stopped talking for a long time. Okay. So Kermit the Frog. Now, Kermit the Frog, he originally made his debut back in the 1950s in different commercials and different show times. He was voiced by Jim Henson and actually performed by Jim Henson himself. Jim Henson also voiced Ralph the Dog. Ralph the Dog actually was the original Muppet. He actually debuted before Kermit the Frog, but Kermit the Frog kind of became the star, and he was the main person of the Muppet Show. So most people associate the Muppets with Kermit the Frog. So let's talk about Kermit the Frog a little bit more, because why not? Now, like I said, Kermit the Frog was on a hot air balloon. This is actually a reference to the start of the movie The Great Muppet Caper. If you remember at the start of The Great Muppet Caper, they are in a plane, they fall out, and then at the end of the film, they're actually in hot air balloons taking off and living a carefree life. Actually, they're in the things at the start too, and they fall down. Eventually, they jump out of the plane halfway through the film. Anyways, that's completely besides the point. Now, in addition to that, we also had it so there was going to be other hot air balloons, obviously going to be found around Walt Disney World. There is one over at Disney Springs where you guys can go up and down, up and down. It used to have Characters in Flight, was the original name for it. And on Characters in Flight, they had several different characters that actually could fly that were found on the outside of the balloon. This included characters like Peter Pan, Wendy, John Michael, Tinkerbell, Aladdin and Jasmine on the magic carpets, and several other characters as well. Now, as time would go on, they would also have it so they would paint over this area and it would just become a blue. And to me, it's not as exciting, but it was part of the transformation of Disney Springs. Now, in addition to that transformation of that balloon, also a few of the different areas on the Disney Springs west side would also change as well. One of my favorites, D Street, would make way for the brand new Star Wars attraction, or not Star Wars attraction, but the brand new Star Wars gift shop. And inside this gift shop would be several different things, including little nods to Galaxy's Edge. And now they even have a few little nods that would pay tribute to the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel. I was just going to say, he doesn't even take a breath. Ramble on, Disney man. I 100% agree on the way. Her not a storybook circuit at the Princess Storybook or Fairy Tale Hall. When you go in there in the queue. Who's our next one? Kevin from Up. Okay. Kevin from Up. No problem. Okay. So the Star Wars Galactic Star Cruiser Hotel, I don't know much about it because I've been avoiding it like the plague because I want to experience it firsthand. And anytime a new thing opens up, I don't actually read up about it at all until I get to experience it, and then I read up about it. So I don't know a ton about it, but I do know that it actually is situated where the back part of the Disney's Hollywood Studios parking lot once sat. The cast member lot used to sit in that back area. Now, the cast member parking lot actually now is a little bit bigger than it used to be. Actually, where the Star Wars Hotel is, it actually sat where the entrance of Disney's Hollywood Studios actually sat as well. Remember, there used to be two different entrances to Disney's Hollywood Studios. None of them are the entrance that you actually have today. One of them was found over across from the boardwalk area. That's the one that I usually came through. And then the other one was found by coming from I-4, and you would go through and there would be like this green archway. And on that green archway, they would have several different films that were going to be paying tribute inside of that area. They had things like R2-D2 and C-3PO. They had Toy Story characters. They had Kermit the Frog on there. They had Sorcerer Mickey, all these different characters that we've already talked about tonight. And then they also had it so, they had like the film reels going through. Now, film reels were kind of a big part of Disney's Hollywood Studios when it first opened up way back in the day. Now, when guests used to go to Disney's Hollywood Studios when it first opened up, there were different things that paid tribute to actual film, like live action film and animated film. In fact, when they first opened up, there was only 3 attractions. There was the Great Movie Ride, where you went through all of the greatest moments of movie history. And then you had the Studio Backlot Tour, which would take you through the backstage things of different movies. Now, one of the great things about this backstage tour was it was kind of the idea of what now you see on DVD bonus features. And that's why they got rid of it, because now everyone had DVDs and they could see how movies were being made. So the entire idea of this park kind of fell by the wayside. But in addition to those 2 attractions, we also had the Magic of Disney Animation. Now, inside the Magic of Disney Animation, you could go through and you could actually learn how to create a brand new Disney character, and you would go through and watch animators actually create characters. And remember the film starring Walter Cronkite and Robin Williams, hands down one of my favorite films of all time. In fact, there's an entire thing in there about Peter Pan and how Robin Williams becomes a lost boy. And for years, I thought it was an actual scene from the film. And I remember watching Peter Pan at home one time when I was a kid, and I was like, wait, how come that scene's not in here? Like, that scene's no longer around? What's going on? And then I realized, like, years later, I was like, oh, it was a different movie that I was watching. Anyways, so as the Magic of Disney Animation would eventually evolve, they would have it so they would create 3 full-length animated feature films inside of this area. One of them would be Brother Bear. Another one would be Mulan. And the final one, Oh man, I'm drawing a blank here. I've been rambling for so long. Mulan, Brother Bear, Lilo and Stitch, and Lilo and Stitch. So if you would go to the back area of the entire area, or if you go to the back area of the building, they had all these different animated characters found on it. There was actually 3 characters that were found there that were all kind of emphasized more than the other ones, and they were characters of Lilo and Stitch, Mulan, along with Mushu, and then Kenai and Koda, mainly due to the fact that those 3 films were prominently filmed right there at Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, in addition to that, along that wall on the left-hand side, you could also find an area where you could actually paint and color your own Disney character. Ooh, but it was all digital, so you never actually had to keep it. And then in the center of the room, they had it so they did a brand new meet and greet area. And this meet and greet area had it so that every time a new Disney film would come out, this would be the area where you could actually go through and meet all of these different characters. Now, one of my favorite ones of all time was a character that was there no matter when you went, because he was actually part of the backdrop, and that was Kevin from Up. He was actually like this giant bird, and he would come down. Now, holy cow. Okay, I'm trying to find the next one. I'm assuming this for the Peter Pan broke into houses. That was a loose connection. Is this Pirates of the Caribbean? Is that what you want? Pirates of the Caribbean? That's the next one that I see. So I'm assuming Pirates of the Caribbean. Otherwise, we're going to go to the next one, which is Charlie Conway. I'm not even caught up, so. Okay, well, I'm going to assume that's Pirates of the Caribbean. So let's get to Pirates of the Caribbean. All right, so Kevin from Up, now he actually makes appearances over at Disney's Animal Kingdom, over by the character landings. Now, the character landings area that you can actually meet Kevin from Up at now, if you would actually go down that path, there used to be other character meet and greets there, which I think people always thought was pretty cool because it was kind of off the beaten path. So if you ever went down there, you're usually one of like 3 other guests that were in the area meeting those characters. Oh, that was in reference to Peter Pan being a pirate. So we're going to Charlie Conway is the next one we're going to. Okay. Oh man, I've already committed. Now, down there was the Discovery Island riverboats originally. It only ran for about a year. And the Discovery Island riverboats took you from that dock, and it would take you all the way around the Tree of Life Island and land right back at that dock. It was a slow-moving journey that went literally nowhere. It was kind of boring. It was kind of lame. So eventually they got rid of it. And eventually the boats would actually go over to the Magic Kingdom area. Now, if you've ever taken one of the boats from one of the resorts over to Magic Kingdom over at Bay Lake or Seven Seas Lagoon, all of those boats are actually kind of, well, not all repurposed, but 2 of them are repurposed as Discovery Island riverboats that would eventually make their way over there instead. Now, while you are over at the different resorts there, or at those boats will take you to the Polynesian Resort. They'll take you to Grand Floridian. They'll take you to Contemporary, and they'll take you to the Wilderness Cabins, along with Wilderness Lodge. Now, Wilderness Lodge has one of my favorite lobbies anywhere on Walt Disney World property. One of my favorite things about these lobbies, though, is the music that plays. Now, have you ever really just stopped and listened to some of the music on around Walt Disney World property? It always makes so much sense on what the surroundings are. Or does it? No, it doesn't. Not always. Sometimes it is the most obscure, random Disney music that is playing in these lobbies. For instance, when you were inside the Wilderness Lodge, it's all these peaceful, like woodsy things. And then there's this one piece of music that it feels very uplifting. It doesn't feel like it doesn't belong at Wilderness Lodge, but when you know where it's from, you're like, why on earth is this song playing there? I know what you're thinking. What on earth song are you talking about? It is a song that is actually found from the second Mighty Ducks film, D2. The Quack Attack is back, Jack. Now, if you've ever seen D2 or the first one, Mighty Ducks, or D2 and Mighty Ducks are back, Jack, or D3, all of them revolve around all the different kids, along with Coach coach, Coach Bombay. But one of the main characters in the film, the main kid in the film, is none other than Charlie Conway. Now, Charlie Conway, and Eric, we're skipping yours because you had back to back. So we're going to go to the next one, and they'll maybe eventually make your way back to that one. Keep throwing your things in. We only have 10 minutes left, unless we got new subscribers. I haven't even looked yet. I've just been rambling on for the last 50 minutes without taking a breath. Charlie Conway. We're going. So we're going to Castaway Key. All right, that should be a fun one to figure out. Charlie Conway. Eric, you choose really random ones, and I love it because it gives me a challenge. It gives me a really tough challenge. Charlie Conway appeared in all 3 Mighty Ducks films. He did not appear in the Mighty Ducks series, however, that was found on Disney Plus. Now, Disney Plus has had several different series that were based around different films or different ideas, and one of my favorite ones on there. I love the Mighty Ducks series. I think the Mighty Ducks series is just such a great one. It wasn't like the Mighty Ducks series that was the cartoon, the animated cartoon. I wasn't a big fan of that one. That one came back part of the Disney Afternoon back in the 1990s, and it just wasn't that great of a show. Like, it was okay, but it wasn't the greatest show. The Mighty Ducks series, however, is a great show. If you've never seen it, check it out. Also, other shows that I absolutely love on there are things like The Imagineering Story. And then there's a show that talks about like the backstage or the movie props from different animated films. Now, not animated films, from live action films, there's an entire episode about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, another one completely about Mary Poppins. There's another one about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. There's one about The Nightmare Before Christmas. And then there's also one about Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, Pirates of the Caribbean was actually filmed in the Caribbean for the most part. There were some parts that were not filmed in the Caribbean. But one of the ships that was actually filmed in the film for the second and the third film was Davy Jones's ship. Now, Davy Jones's ship, after they finished filming, they didn't really know what to do with it, so they actually placed it inside of the actual Castaway Key over at Disney's the Disney Cruise Line Island. So if you ever gone to Castaway Key back in the day, you would actually be able to find the Flying Dutchman out there in the middle of the lagoon. At one point, they had the Black Pearl out there as well. So that island has always had a lot of different references to different films. But I always loved the idea that they had that ship out there at one point. Sadly, I never got to see it because I had not done the Disney cruise by the time they had done that. But Castaway Key, how are we going to connect this? Castaway Key has a lot of different characters that you can actually find out in the water when you're snorkeling. So if you're ever out there, you can see Mickey and you can see Minnie while you're snorkeling. In addition to that, you can also find some old ships from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the Mike Feen keelboat. Now, Mike Feen keelboats used to go around the rivers of America over at the Magic Kingdom, and they actually closed in like 2003. So I barely missed it on my college program to actually be able to ride that whenever I wanted to. That's besides the point. Now, the Mike Feen keelboats today obviously don't exist, but you can actually find one of them while you're going around the rivers of America. Still to this day, it's right outside the Pirate Cave that is found on that island. Now, if you've ever wanted to know where the dock is, where you actually used to build or board the Mike Feen keelboats, that actually can be found at the Haunted Mansion queue line. Now, the Haunted Mansion queue line goes through, and we talked about it earlier, opened March 24th, 2011. Several different references to the different animators or the different artists that actually created the film. But in there, we also have references to characters or people like Mark Davis. And like I said earlier, Mark Davis was an actual animator before he became an Imagineer, and he worked on characters like Tinkerbell. Now, Tinkerbell became such an iconic character that throughout the years, she did not just make appearances in Peter Pan, but she actually became the star of what eventually would become known as Disneyland. Now, when Disneyland was first being promoted, they wanted to have it so they would use different characters that people would recognize, but not have it so it was characters that were too famous just in case Disneyland failed, and they associated with those characters. So they wanted to have Mickey Mouse anywhere. Like they if you look at the opening day film and footage and stuff, Mickey Mouse is there in character form, but he's not like the star. It was always Tinkerbell, it was always Jiminy Cricket, and that was just because those two characters weren't that popular back in 1955, that if Disneyland failed, they would hope that people would associate those two characters with the park and not Mickey Mouse, making Mickey Mouse a failure as well. Pretty smart on their part. But when you would go over to Disneyland and you'd have it so those two were the main starring attractions now, they would have it so eventually they would bring in all these different animated characters as well. So when you're actually going through Disneyland, you can find several different references to many different films, especially when you're walking through Fantasyland. You've got things like the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, obviously Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, Snow White's Scary Adventures with Snow White, Peter Pan's Flight with Peter Pan, Pinocchio's Daring Journey with Pinocchio. And then, of course, around the corner, they actually have a brand new area that focuses around Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's like one of the coolest things ever. They have like this little spinning thing, and when you like spin it, there's like it plays like an instrumental version of Topsy Turvy. And there's several different Disney animated characters that are hidden in there, including characters like Beauty and the Beast. Now, Beauty and the Beast the directors actually would go on to create, or not create, but they would help bring to life the story of Hunchback of Notre Dame. So those two connections were there. However, before that, the first animated film that they ever worked on for Disney, solely just the two of them as the directors, was the pre-show for the film Cranium Command that was found over at Epcot. Wait. We're going to take a break right now. We're going to look and see how many subscribers we're at. We have 4 minutes left of the show if we did not get any new subscribers. We've not got any new subscribers, so send invites, get your friends. If we get one new subscriber, we're going to add a few minutes on, and then if you get another one after that, we'll add a few more on, etc. So keep on throwing your suggestions out there, and keep on throwing your friends over here as well, so we can get more and more subscribers, and we can continue this show on until the end of time. Okay, so Cranium Command. Cranium Command, it was inside of the Wonders of Life Pavilion. Now the Wonders of Life Pavilion had several different areas that were inside of there. That's a completely different connection that like my mind just got frazzled. Okay, so inside there, plus my friend just texted me too. Wondering what time we're having dinner tomorrow. Okay, how are we going to connect this? All right, so Cranium Command also had Body Wars inside there, or Wonders Life also had Body Wars. It also had Make It a Me and several other different interactive areas as well. However, one of my favorite areas that was found inside of the Wonders of Life Pavilion was not a real attraction, but it was kind of an attraction. They used to have these exercise bikes there, and in front of the exercise bike was a screen. And depending on how fast you pedaled the bike was how fast you went through the different areas on the screen. Now, some of these areas that you would go through would be just random parks, or it would be like the wilderness. But one of my favorites was you would actually go through Magic Kingdom itself, and you would be driving through there. And the faster you pedal, the faster you would go through Main Street USA. Now, Main Street USA has been home to several different people going down it. Actually, millions of guests have gone down Main Street USA. However, one of the things that has gone down Main Street USA probably more times than most is the Main Street Electrical Parade. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Disneyland proudly presents the Main Street Electrical Parade. All right, so the Main Street Electrical Parade would debut way back in the 1970s and eventually continue to today. Where it's going to be going back over to Disneyland sometime in the very near future. Throughout the years, that would actually make way for Spectrum Magic at Walt Disney World, and Spectrum Magic featured so many different characters when it first debuted, including Roger Rabbit, who we talked a little bit about earlier. But Roger Rabbit actually used to be there. He was a conductor, and then in 1992, they would get rid of Roger Rabbit from the parade, mainly due to the fact that a more popular character, who's also kind of zany, would be debuting in films, and that was the character of the Genie. Now, the Genie, originally in 1992's Aladdin, eventually he would appear in the Aladdin TV show, Return to Jafar, Aladdin the King of Thieves, so many different great animated films. But in Aladdin and No, I lost my train of thought there. I had it and I lost it. Oh, we need to connect this one. After we get to the next one, we're gonna end if we haven't got any more subscribers. So this is the grand finale. I can't blow it now. It's possibly the grand finale. I can't blow it now. I had a connection. I just lost it when I said Aladdin, the King of Thieves. And so let's backpedal. We're still talking about the genie. We're talking about now the genie would go through and he would become not just in those films, but he would actually have his own parade float at one time. He had the characters of flight, or he was part of the flight float that used to be part of the Sharing the Dream Come True parade. And then eventually the Sharing Dream Come True parade would feature several different characters on the flight float, including Bernard Bianca, Dumbo, the stork. Watch out for Mr. Stork. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. So many different characters there. Now, I had a connection that's driving me crazy that I can't think of how I got there. We just got to keep on talking, because if we don't, they win if you stop talking. So that float would be celebrating the 100 years of Walt Disney's life. That's when it first came out, was in 2001, and sharing a dream come true. And it had, so there's all these different snow globes that the characters would actually be inside of. Now, when Walt Disney passed away back in 1966, there's lots of different tributes to him that were created, and then his legacy lived on. And then in 2001, when that happened, it was the first time in quite a few years that we had like something massive that dealt specifically with Walt Disney himself. The next time that we'd have something similar in size to a huge reference to Walt Disney himself would be a few years later, about 5 years later, when the brand new film would debut, known as Meet the Robinsons. Now, in Meet the Robinsons, you would have it so they had the phrase "keep moving forward," which is a reference to Walt Disney's quote where he would say "keep moving forward," and they would have it so several different references to Walt, including the intro was a brand new thing featuring Steamboat Willie whistling. And of course, if you've never seen Meet the Robinsons is such a great film. It stars all of the Robinson family, including Lewis. And then, of course, it starred his childhood roommate, who was also known as Cube. Okay, let's do that. Might be the end of it if we didn't get any new subscribers. Come on, new subscribers, give us 1476. 1476. We just want one for right now, and then we're gonna move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. It looks like that might not. That was not it. That was all. That was the end. All right. So that's pretty good. I stalled. I think I stalled like twice for a lot longer than I should have. But overall, not bad. Not a bad connect the dots. I'm going to go drink all the water in the world after this episode. So on that note, tonight's show is once again sponsored by It's All About the Miles Travel. Make sure you stop by It's All About the Milestravel.com for all of your Disney travel needs. All of their services are absolutely, positively, 100% free. So make sure you book with them for your next Disney vacation. If you haven't done this already, make sure you like and subscribe to this video. Thank you everyone for joining us once again. Please keep on spreading the word about the Wednesday show and From Screen to Theme, and invite anyone and everyone to join the group over on Facebook. Or, of course, if you're not already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you go subscribe on YouTube. My goal is to hit 1,500 subscribers within the next few days. So every time someone subscribes, it is massively awesome. I greatly appreciate every single person who's subscribed so far. Just keep spreading the word. Keep spreading the word and invite your friends. Share the videos. Sharing a video goes a long way. Let me tell you, sharing a video really goes a long way. So keep sharing those videos, keep liking on those videos. Every single time you hit a like on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, it truly makes a massive difference. So keep on doing that. I greatly appreciate every single one of you guys out there. And of course, as always, if you have not ordered your copy of A Closer Look or A Closer Look or A Closer Look yet, make sure you visit the Shop Now button to order your books. And of course, as always, remember that anything can happen if you let it Have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Goodbye now. Goodbye. Are they are they gone? Are they gone? Oh, good. My cheeks are just killing me.